He's over there on the other side. You'll be up this.
Everyone, we're getting ready to start our program. Good morning. My name is Brian Cash. I'm the school superintendent for the Buffalo Public Schools. And I'm just looking out, and it occurs to me that we have most of the educators here. And I see that you're kind of spread out. We have such a treat today, from the student performances to the extraordinary guest speaker that we have. I'd like everyone to move, and let's get kind of tight right now here. Let's come down and fill up these seats. Come on, come on. So that you don't go out early. Come on down. Come on down. I know. Sit in the aisle and sit in the back. No. Come on down. Come on down. That's right. BCSA members, Miss Barton says, come on down. Oh, they hustling now. Hustling now. Hey, how you doing? Come on. I know when it's right. Where's Dr. Brewer? Come on. Lead by example. Here we go. That's great. I appreciate it. Come on. Miss Augusto. No, that's not close enough. Come on. Come on. That's good. Come on down, please. We have a real treat this morning. That's a little better. Come on. That's it. Miss Pietrowski, come on. Why ain't anybody sitting there? Tell everybody to sit there. Come on. At least your staff should be sitting there. All right. Dr. Morrell, where are you? Let's go. Time to get started. We have guests. We got to get going. Students are waiting. They were huddling. Yes, come on. I don't know any good jokes. Come on. All right, let's see. This is early. Assistant now. Somebody get Dr. Morrell, please. Time to go. Really good to see all of you this morning. Have a good weekend. I thought spring was here. The birds came, they were singing. Now they're huddled up in the rafters, frozen. No, this is Buffalo. Kidding? What is this snow day? little ad-lib in there now. Here comes the real master of ceremonies, and we'll get started momentarily. Dr. Zima, are you ready? All right, thank you.
Good morning. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the posting of the colors led by McKinley High School JROTC, the Pledge of Allegiance led by Bennett Board of Education member, student representative, in the singing of the national anthem, and lift your voice and sing.
Colors, hold. Request permission to post the colors.
Post the colors.
Post. Ready, post. Precinct, march.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Stripes
Thank you. Let's give a nice round of applause for City Honors High School Corral and for our Board of Education Student Representative Bennett Cordero and our McKinley High School JROTC will finish us off. Just a second, please don't, please just wait. Excuse me, just 1 second. I'm sorry. It's okay.
Order! Halt! Ready, face, forward, march!
Thank you. Please be seated. Good morning and welcome, esteemed Board of Education members, Superintendent Kreiner Cash, Superintendent Mary Morris of the Cheektowaga Central School District, Chief Academic Officer Ann Botticelli, Buffalo State College faculty and students, and Dean Patterson, university and college partners, community partners, esteemed scholar presenters, principals, central office staff, teachers, parents, and students, to the 2017 Urban Forum Speaker Series of the Buffalo Public Schools. Give yourselves a nice round of applause for being here today. And a very special welcome to our keynote speaker and culturally responsive teaching and scientific expert, Dr. Christopher Emden. Let's welcome him, please. From Teachers College, Columbia University, I am Fatima Morel, Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum, Assessment, and Instruction. For those of you who don't know me, I know most of you know me. At this time, I would like to just ask Superintendent Mary Morris to please stand so that we may recognize you in this partnership. Superintendent Mary Morris. Thank you for all. And I would also like to represent Dean Patterson from the Buffalo State College. Please stand. And I would like to welcome our Wood Bills Endowed Chair from Buffalo State College, Dr. Javon Hunter, who has also been paramount in presentation of this program. Thank you. In the work of our division, we seek to operationalize the commitments of our district's new education bargain with students and parents, that is creating new relationships with our teachers to provide an equal and high-quality education to every child as a civil right. In developing new relationships with our teachers, we are working collaboratively and in a supportive manner to ensure success in addressing the diverse learning needs of all of our students. That means ongoing, high-quality professional development that equips teachers and administrators with the tools for teaching diverse students. This includes utilizing a curriculum of inclusion and rigorous, high-quality instruction to ensure academic achievement for all learners. To that end, this year's forum is focused on the social justice teaching construct of culturally relevant pedagogy. Social justice teaching is a powerful tool we can use to empower students to be critical thinkers, construct their own knowledge and meaning, and develop healthy ways for self-advocacy, for equity, an agency for change within the wider community. It is with great pleasure and enthusiasm that we welcome Dr. Christopher Emden from Teachers College, Columbia University. Dr. Chris Emden is an expert on culturally relevant pedagogy and will provide a plethora of instructional strategies that we can begin to implement in our classrooms tomorrow during his workshop sessions. He also brings a wealth of knowledge and delivery of STEM education to students of color. I hope today's sessions will help us all continue along the journey of providing a culturally and linguistically responsive education for all students. We know we will all grow and learn from this unparalleled, mind-changing experience with Dr. Emden. At this time, I would like to welcome our wonderful and dynamic superintendent, Dr. Kreiner Cash, for his opening remarks and introductions. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. And thank you, Dr. Fatima Morel, for your extraordinary work in bringing us the second annual Urban Education Forum, a really, really big deal here in Buffalo Public Schools, and we thank you for your leadership on this important work. Let's give Fatima a big round of applause. Thank you so much. On behalf of the Buffalo Public Schools, I too would like to welcome all of our special guests, our colleagues from the Cheektowaga School District, from Buffalo State College, and of course all of our great educators here with the Buffalo Public Schools. I'd like to give a special welcome to Ms. Woods. Ms. Woods is here as board member for the Buffalo Public Schools. Welcome, Ms. Woods. Just a few remarks before we invite up our distinguished guest. You know, just over a year ago, we said we've got to make a deal. We've got to make a bargain with our parents, with our students. Buffalo Public Schools' overall population has not increased very much over the last decade, but certain populations within the overall population were increasing, and when we looked at the data, we knew we had to do something different, couldn't do what we've always done and expect to be somewhere different. So we have a wonderful growing population of new Americans that are coming to our city, for example. And every day over at Central Registration, we have new families, new students coming from over 100 countries, speaking over 80 languages into our schools. And we know that many of these students, once they learn English, they go fast and they learn quickly and become leaders in their class rank once they become seniors, if they stay with us more than 6 years. But still, we needed to do more than just talk louder to the students that came to us from these different languages and different cultures. And then our African American and Hispanic population. Long traditional neighborhoods and populations here in Buffalo Public Schools. Over 80% of our students are African American, Hispanic, and from the poorest zip codes in Buffalo. And yet, not enough of these young people are making it through the gauntlet, are making it through the education pipeline. And so we know, and we've heard it before, that education always beats incarceration, and that this is probably the greatest social justice issue of our time, is to educate well, increase access, increase opportunity, and increase quality of educational experiences for all of our students, but especially for our students who happen to be poor and who are of color. Violence among youth, and there are a host of reasons, and Dr. Emden is going to be more of an expert on this issue than I am, but violence seems to be increasing especially in our cities. Every 24 hours, 14 young men, young boys are gunned down. Over half of our boys of color in some cities, some urban cities, are in some part of the correctional system. Over half. Homicide is the leading cause of death for young boys of color. And the litany goes on. I could recite it more. At the height of apartheid, they didn't have as many people of color in prison as we do today of our people of color. It must stop, it must change. We have to reverse the pattern. And one of the ways you reverse the pattern is you get very, very intentional about it. You don't just give lip service to it. And so as part of our education bargain, as part of the requests that came in from many, many parents, we have begun a several-year strategy of deep dive training for all of our principals, for all of our teachers, our literacy and instructional coaches, and all of us, because board members have partaken in this work as well. And that is culturally and linguistically responsive teaching. What it means, why it's important, why it is a key strategy for change in urban education. So we don't need to go on with it today, but I want to say that we are very serious about that. And the two major issues, that strategy and our trauma-informed care strategy, because so many of our students deal with trauma every day. 35% of our young people have said that they have seen, not heard about, have seen someone get shot, stabbed, or beaten. And so when they come to school, we have to be sensitive about how to support, how to still nurture, give tough love, and not escalate potential negative interactions with our students. So I'm very proud of what we're doing here in this regard, and this day promises to be special. A lot of distinguished speakers, and our first one I'm going to introduce to you now. And before I do, here comes Miss Sharon Copman. Miss Sharon Copman, come right over here, young lady, with your guest, with your colleague, Miss Woods. We're glad you're here. Distinguished board member from the Maston District. And I thought I saw Ulysses Wingo here a while ago. Is he still here? Yes, sir. Ulysses Wingo is here, our councilman and education chair for the Common Council. If I miss anyone, please, I apologize. But I also saw, and I thought I recognized that young man, but we also have a special young man sitting right down here in front. His name is Derek Luke, a really talented young actor. And I don't know if you saw Antoine Fisher, but he's a star and an inspiration to many other young actors. Derek Luke, we're glad you're here. Dr. Christopher Emden is an associate professor in the Department of Mathematics, Science, and Technology at Teachers College, Columbia University, where he also serves as Director of Science Education at the Center for Health Equity and Urban Science Education. He is also the Associate Director of the Institute for Urban and Minority Education. He is an alumni fellow at the Hutchins Center at Harvard University. Emden was named the 2015 Multicultural Educator of the Year by the National Association of Multicultural Educators and has been honored as a STEM Access Champion of Change by the White House under President Obama. In addition to teaching, he served as Minorities and Energy Ambassador for the U.S. Department of Energy. Dr. Emden is a social critic, a public intellectual and science advocate whose commentary on issues of race, culture, inequality, and education have appeared in dozens of influential periodicals, including the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post. Dr. Emden holds a PhD in urban education with a concentration in mathematics, science, and technology, master's degrees in both natural sciences and education administration, and bachelor's degrees in physical anthropology, biology, and chemistry. Super educated young man. He is the creator of the Hip Hop Ed social media movement and is the author of the award-winning book, Urban Science Education for the Hip Hop Generation, and For White Folks Who Teach in the Hood, and the rest of y'all too, which is currently on the New York Times bestseller list, and we've had book club around that, and most of our board members have read this book. So we are delighted to have Dr. Christopher Emden with us today, and sir, won't you please come up to a rousing round of well-deserved applause. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Quick introduction, huh? All right.
Walk around a little bit. It's up to you.
Thank you.
It's up to you.
I'll hold this.
Okay.
Till we get that figured out.
All right, sir.
All right, so good morning, everyone. Good morning, good morning. I only have about an hour for this one, so we got to get going quickly. Is this microphone working? Is it? Perfect. And are my slides working? Can someone help me out with those slides? I could give the talk without it if I need to, but I'd prefer if I had them. You can help me out, sir? All right, so as he works on that, let me just open up with saying how deeply appreciative I am for the invitation and for the kind words, and hoping that we gonna talk today. All right. I'll give a few disclaimers. Over the course of my talk in this hour, I will probably say something that offends someone. Know that if I say something to offend you, it's not for the sake of just offending you, right? It's because sometimes, in order for us to really get to the point where we want to around this work, we have to sort of say some things that are uncomfortable. But as I say those things, I'll also try to give you guys some practical solutions, and I might say something that you do like. So understand that being offended or being just uncomfortable is actually the part of learning and a part of progress. So you're not going to just walk out and be mad when I say something to make you mad. Is that correct? Some of y'all didn't answer. We'll get there. All right? And then second of all, what I hope to do is to give you this information from a very practical perspective, an educator's perspective, because I was a teacher for 10 years, a researcher's perspective, and also from a scientist's perspective on how to really address these issues around achievement gaps, around the underperformance of certain populations, and how we move the agenda forward for young people. Y'all with me still? Okay, so I'll start off by telling a quick story. So I have a 3-year-old daughter, and as you guys may know, 3-year-olds in 2017 just have a very different life experience than 3-year-olds about a decade ago. So my daughter's experience essentially revolves around all the things I have to get her to. I have to get her to ballet, I have to get her to her nursery school, I have to get her to her play dates, I have to get play dates is a thing too. If you miss a play date, it's a very, very big deal. So yeah, there's a number of events that she has to get to. Essentially, when I am home, I am not Dr. Hendon anymore, I am her assistant. You gotta grab this one? This one? Just take the whole thing here. Yeah. So I only got an hour, bro. I gotta run. I need this one? You can't hear me with this one? Oh, for the live stream. Oh man. All right. You messing up my flow a little bit, you know. But once I get the mic like this, I feel like a rapper. So it might get a lot better. So we're back to talking about Sydney and her amazing, amazing play dates and all her appointments, and the fact that I am less of a dad and more of an assistant when I'm home, right? And so in order for me to be an effective father, I feel like my job is to do all the things I'm required to do in the moment, which is get her to every play date, get her to every appointment, get her there on time, by any means necessary, meet the goal. And so to do that, I use all the tools at my disposal. So those tools involved using my smartphone, using a calendar, using, have this book that sort of tells me where I need to do at certain points in time. I use the digital and the practical to meet my goals, because the goals have to be met. You guys still with me? So I get her to her appointments, and sometimes I feel really good about myself when I get her to her appointments on time. I finally get her into ballet. I sit in the car, I take a deep breath, I'm like, whoo, we did it, until I get her to the next point. And so I'm feeling super efficient as dad. And then one day, she had no appointments this day, and I know she had no appointments because there was nothing on my calendar, there was nothing on my smartphone, and there was nothing on my organizer. So we're in the living room, and I'm like, all right, this is a day where we can relax. So we're in the living room, and we're sitting there, and we're sort of playing, and she looks up to me and goes, Papa, we're late for ballet. And it scares me because usually I get her everywhere, and I'm like, I'm efficient, I'm a good dad, I'm getting you where you need to go. And apparently I must have missed this appointment. So I go upstairs, I grab her coat, I grab her stuff, I grab her leotard, I'm like, let's go. And she goes, not real ballet, imaginary ballet. And I was like, whew, right? And so now I figure, it's time for me to play along, right? Because whenever a child invites you into their imagination, your job is to follow along on that journey. You guys are all educators, you know this, right? So I turned it on real quick. I was like, all right, let's go to imaginary ballet. So she jumps on the couch and she goes, now let's drive. So I get in the driver's seat of the imaginary car and I starting to drive. And she goes, no, I'm driving, right? So she gets up and she switches seats with me. We're going full-fledged in this, you know what I mean? Like, we got to really activate the imagination. So now I'm in the imaginary car. She's driving and she goes, Papa, let me strap you in. So she straps me into my imaginary child seat, and then we start driving off to ballet. And as we start driving off to ballet, something amazing happens. And what happens is, we're about 35 seconds in, and she winds down the imaginary window, and then she looks out the window, and then she starts yelling at people. Get out the way, we're late, we have to get there, right? And then she's honking her imaginary horn, and she's like, oh, nuts, these people, right? And so the question is, what happened in that moment? What happened is this. As a father, I thought I was getting her where she needed to go. I was meeting the benchmarks I was supposed to meet by getting her there on time. So I'm supposed to be a good dad, right? However, I'm doing so with such haste, with no attention to detail, with no attention with what she's experiencing, that I could not understand what she was experiencing unless I sat in her seat and she took me on the journey of what she was trying to get me to go. So even though I'm getting her to ballet when I'm supposed to get her to ballet, maybe you're getting your kids to the next grade when you think you're supposed to get them to the next grade, but what they're experiencing in the process kind of undoes the goal of getting her where she needed to go. Y'all with me? This is where I want to start today. I want to start today with an understanding of the fact that we may be meeting certain benchmarks or not meeting them, or we may be meeting this surface criteria of effective instruction, but if the young people in the classroom feel like your teaching is the equivalent of you yelling out the window, you're undoing all the progress that you're doing anyway. So at some point, we got to take a step back and reimagine what the goals are. Because the goals, we might be meeting them on paper, but if you're doing damage on the spirit of the young person, then she's not, because you know what? If she's upset when she gets to ballet, she underperforms in ballet anyway. Right? If she's angry at me or I made her feel tense, she's not going to meet the goals anyway. Y'all with me still? We're going to go on this journey. Y'all ain't right with me yet. And so what I want y'all to understand is, who's seen this scene out of The Sixth Sense? Anyone? And this is a really powerful scene because it was a point where, this ain't working, I'm going to work with it, don't worry about it. Thank you. It was a scene where this young man takes a deep breath and he has to reveal to the father character that he sees dead people. You remember the scene? And as this scene plays out, it's going to play out to the end. What happened? I'm going to do my own slides. Oh, but you need me for the camera? So, can I move? I can't move? Oh, man, y'all stopping my flow this morning. But I can move. I can go down there if I want to. Okay, thank you, bro. So what happens at the end of the scene is that he starts to realize that he's revealing to the educator, to the father, that he actually sees dead people. And when he does that, the father's looking at him like, my kid is bugging out, my kid is strange, my kid is crazy. And it elucidates the point I was making previously, which is always that the experiences of the person who's feeling the trauma is never the same as the person who's invoking it. When we're talking initially about me as a dad, so I want to make this personal, not really understanding the experiences of my daughter, I couldn't really see it till I sat in her seat. And when she said it to me for the first time, it jarred me. When the young people are telling you about how they're experiencing your instruction, it's going to jar you. It's going to be equivalent of Bruce Willis finally saying, oh my gosh, he sees dead people. And you have to, first of all, be comfortable with the tension of being told who you are. But if you don't create the space in the classroom for the young person to be able to let you know how they're feeling the instruction, you haven't even done, nothing you're doing after that makes any sense. D, can you hit me on the next slide, bro? So here's the title for today. There you go. The title for today is not the title I gave you. I'm remixing it. Because you know why I'm remixing it? Because I know you guys are all caught up in cultural relevance and cultural responsiveness. And I want to start off by telling you that the title is When Cultural Relevance is Not Enough. Ain't enough, as a matter of fact. And it's very significant that I use ain't instead of is not. I just have to say is not so you know that I can speak properly. But when cultural relevance ain't enough, all right? So we move towards a reality pedagogy. We're going to talk about that right now. As we recognize that curriculum is inherently inequitable, and this is for white folks who teach in the hood and the rest of y'all too. So can I break this down? Okay, we got it. Y'all, you follow along. Look, first of all, we all understand intellectually the idea that cultural relevance is where we need to go. Some folks agree with it, some folks don't. I'm telling you that cultural relevance is an age-old practice. That's about 15 years too late. And the reason why I'm telling you that that's 15 years too late is that cultural relevance as a phenomenon, as a pedagogical practice, has become such a norm in academic institutions that it's lost its fervor. See, people think they're doing culturally relevant work if they're teaching based on their perceptions of the culture of young people. And if you're teaching based on your perceptions of the culture, it doesn't mean that you're really focusing on their realities. See, my perception of the cultural experience of my daughter was that she was getting to all her appointments on time, but her reality was that I was being a person who was yelling at folks out the window. So if you think you're doing cultural relevance based on your perception of culture without understanding that the fact that you have to focus on the realities of the experience of young people, you're about 15, 20 years too late. Cultural relevance is an intellectual conversation. Reality pedagogy is in the process, in the immediate process, because culture ever evolves. Look, y'all, I'm knocking on 40 years old. I like to think I have swag and I'm still cool. I engage in a conversation with a young person who's 15 years old. I realize how old I am. Technically, we share the same culture, but our realities are quite different. I'm a hip-hop ad. I love A Tribe Called Quest and Biggie. Young folks right now are talking about Bad and Bougie and Migos. Technically, we're still under the hip-hop generation, but their realities are different from mine. So cultural relevance as a philosophy of understanding, if it does not recognize the fact that culture is ever evolving, loses the mark. And you could culture relevant yourself into an effective pedagogy. And that's dangerous because folks who are in this pocket of cultural relevance think they got it. Like, oh, we're right with the times. Nah, bro, you late. So cultural relevance ain't enough. The second piece of this, which is very important, is the idea that we recognize that curriculum is inherently inequitable. And this is what I've discovered through all of my research thus far. We think that if you give young folks the most new curriculum, the most groundbreaking curriculum, that if we give all the kids the exact same curriculum, then it means that we're doing equitable work. And I'm telling you that the curriculum is inherently inequitable because it does not reflect the reality of all the learners. Meaning, you could give all the kids across Buffalo the same textbook, and just by the quality of the textbook alone, you think it works well in one area, so let me be equitable and give it to another area, and the other area will underperform, and you think it's a function of their underperformance, and in reality, it's a function of your inability to recognize the fact that the curriculum is flawed. We can't get to where we want to, I'm here to just tell the truth. We can't get to where we want to go with a perception that we're going to give all the kids the same curriculum and the same textbooks, and that's going to erase away the problem. I was asked to be on a board for people who are giving out this grant in California recently. So I went all the way across the country to hang out on this board. They said, Dr. Eminem, we have all these millions of dollars and we've got to spend it. And I said, all right, I guess we can help you spend it. So we sitting there and we're talking and said, what do we do to help the kids in this district do better? And I said, well, what we really need to focus on is get cultural liaisons who are from the community to be a part of the school leadership team so they could inform you on the realities of the youth experiences. You better print them cats' business cards. You better make sure that they come in. They're like, Dr. Emily, they don't have the educational credentials. I said, well, you got the credentials, but you ain't got the street credentials. So you need to be able to focus on those folks. Needless to say, that didn't quite go well. with the folks I was there to speak with because they were so married to their degrees and their credentials, they didn't want to open up the space for everybody else. So they said, okay, fine, but we got to spend this money because the way these grants go is if you don't spend the money, then the chances of you getting that money next year, y'all know what it is, you won't get the money next year, so you got to spend it. So now I'm giving them information. It's too troubling. So they said, well, we know what we could do? We could bridge the tech divide. And they all said, yes, the tech divide, because it sounds good. And what we're going to do is we're going to get all these kids brand new iPads, brand new technology. And every single kid in this district, whether they're rich, don't it sound good? Whether they're rich or poor, will have access to technology, and we're going to spend XYZ millions of dollars. And they were so excited. And I said, okay. So I leave, and I'm upset. I get back home, and I'm like, you know what? I'm never going back to that district again because they didn't listen to what I had to say about focusing on the instruction. They want to take away the problem. And then 5 years later, they called me up and they said, Dr. Emden, because you know, with these grants, now you got to go back and make sure you did what you said you was going to do. Who knows how this works? Okay. So I go back these years later, and I get there, and they had all these graphs. Ooh, they could do some graphs. Pie graphs, circle graphs. I mean, you know, the math folks will love it. They had all these graphs, and it was pretty and red and yellow and green. See, when people graph me to death, I know they try to hide something. Y'all ain't ready for the truth this morning. So they had all the graphs, and they had all the stuff, and about who they distributed the product to and the process to. And at the end of it, this man said something that was very telling. He said, and after our extensive data research, we've concluded that we spent XYZ amount of dollars in these communities, and isn't it unfortunate that with our investment, they produced no significant change? Y'all listen to me? So we talked about the pedagogy stuff, the stuff that said bring the folks in the community to inform the practice, to reimagine the process. It was too non-academic. So they spent millions of dollars, and the millions of dollars made no significant change. And then they blamed the population who still underperformed for the fact that the monetary investment didn't work. You can't take away a problem. You can't monetize away a problem. And this is where we are. I'm sorry, I just got to be real. This is where we are. Y'all really want to make significant change in the diverse populations that you have in front of you? It's less about the monetary investment and more about the personal commitment to allowing for equity. And a lot of folks, they hold on to that monetary investment because it absolves them from the responsibility of having to do the real work. It is easy to throw money away at a problem from an office that's far away from the community. That's the easy part. And it's easy to be able to justify why you're doing it because it sounds real good. But you know, Jay Electronica once says, it sounds real good and you played the part well, but the energy you're giving off is so unfamiliar. I don't feel you. We need something realer. And the feel you part is the work. Education has for a very long time played with numbers for a very long time. I think the next frontier is the feeling piece. If I don't feel like you with me and I don't feel fully represented, that's more important to me than the money you throw at me. Because you know what? Effective schools can run on $0. And folks don't like to hear this. They don't like to hear it. But you have me here to tell the truth. I don't need millions of dollars to run an effective school. Millions of dollars will make me run a more effective school if I have the appropriate philosophy to teaching. But without the appropriate philosophy of teaching, you're throwing your money into a broken vessel. There's a biblical phrase that says you don't pour new wine and y'all ain't want to go to church. But you can't pour new wine into broken vessels. You waste it essentially, and that's what we do in education every single day. So curriculum is inherently inequitable. And then the last part, which folks don't like me to talk about, and this is particularly for white folks who teach the hood and the rest of y'all too, because we have to come to grips with the fact that in urban spaces where youth are mostly underperforming, a majority of the teachers do not come from the same racial and ethnic backgrounds as the students. Folks don't like to talk about it. Folks get mad. Well, Emden says for white folks, you looked in the mirror lately, you white. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a reality. If you don't look like a demographic, you're not from the demographic, or if you live miles away, then you take that long trip in, and then you spend more time driving to where you live than going into the community. Look, the idea is this. You got to first recognize what your position is. If you don't live in a community and you're not from the community, you may have good intentions, but then you're approaching cultural relevance through your perception of culture, which means that you have to actually go into the community. Now, that's scary for some folks. But I'm telling you, that's the anchor of transgressive pedagogy. Like, you mean I have to go into the bad neighborhood where I heard somebody get shot? Yes. Because the role of the educator is to fully understand the community. Now, if you're scared to go, dial a friend. But what I'm telling you today, that an essential component of transgressive, reality-based pedagogy requires the educator to go into the communities of the learner. And as a district, you could create a consortium of teachers with your school board member to go into the hood. Not in a, let's go and see how exotic they are in their own element kind of way, but in a, I know that I lack something by not being from that space, so inform me on their realities. You know that a teacher who understands the living conditions of the young person creates different conditions in the classroom? Sometimes you think you know. When you stare poverty in the face, and you know what it is, when you feel that fear, when you walk on that block, you think your 15-year-old or 13-year-old or 11-year-old doesn't feel that fear as well? When you feel that fear that young person feels, you go into the classroom differently to try to make them heal from that fear. But as long as you're separated from it, it inhibits you from being able to do the right work. So that's for the white folks who teach in the hood. Now, I'm an equal opportunity sharer here. I also want to make sure that we talk about the rest of y'all too. Because we got to talk about black and brown folks who are educators, who are, I mean, essentially what we have black educators with white supremacist ideologies. And sometimes the white supremacist ideologies of the black educators are more problematic than those of the white educators. Now you got the white educators who we got to work with to be able to get over the guilt they have and their inability to understand the complexities of the work, but they might be good intention. But then you got black folks who are more dangerous than the white folks because they're so deeply committed and aligned to a philosophy that does violence on young people. And it's not their fault, but it's a reality. See, by virtue of being a person of color who's gone through institutions to do well, you get trained to hate who you are. That's the function of schooling. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but that's what schooling does. Schooling forces you to be able to strip away the pieces of yourself that you're not sure about in search of what the school tells you you need. So you go through every year and you don't know it, but you go through first, second, third, fourth, fifth, by ninth grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, you get into college for the first time. You're like, ooh, they accepted me. So now let me not talk that way. Let me not act that way. Let me start marrying myself to a way of knowing and being and existing that is developed and designed by the institution. Sometimes you get embarrassed when you see a real black person. Somebody walk up in a room and a little too loud, you get embarrassed, you want to turn, oh man, I don't want to talk to her. You know, these white folks gonna look at me like I know her. Like, you know what I'm saying? And what I'm telling you is that by virtue of developing this disconnectedness from the beauty and the complexity of the community, you start developing ideologies that only look at meritocracy as the goal of education. And if you only look at education as a meritocratic process, you lose the fact that it's an individualistic and personal process. You see what I'm saying? So you got folks right now who are running. I'm an equal opportunity shooter, right? So I'm going to just tell the truth. They are running to send young folks of color into schools that are populated by white folks or majority white population because those schools are performing well. Because they look at that as a way to get equity. And I understand that. But let me tell you something. In those schools that you're chasing to get into, do they have the type of pedagogical approaches that's going to meet the needs of them young people? You don't want to chase a young person to a place where they're not welcome unless you're creating a structure in that place that makes them welcome. Because otherwise it does more violence than the previous place. Let me tell y'all something real quick. Can I get a timeout? Timeout. Let's talk about history for a second. When we talk about history, we talk about young folks, of people of color generally, and their history in contemporary education. We want to talk about the fact that when we talk about schooling in the United States, Brown versus Board of Ed was the first sort of concerted effort to ensure that schools were more integrated. Y'all with me still? Yes? So we had black schools, black and brown schools, poorer schools. You had white schools who were traditionally more affluent schools. You also had like white poor schools as well. But nobody wanted to send anybody to a place where the poor folks are, ever. The line that bends the world is poverty. But we're going to talk about that later. So you have black folks in these schools, you have white folks in these schools. It's supposed to be separate but equal, but we know it was separate but unequal. We knew that. And then you had these schools, and the reality is this, and folks don't want to talk about this. In those schools, in segregated schools, the students were performing at or higher than the levels of their counterparts in the white, more affluent schools. Right now, we got achievement gaps. There's a 30-year gap, a 40-year gap. Look, those gaps were constructed out of poor structures of schooling because black folks in black schools was doing excellent black stuff. I just want to be clear. And white folks in white schools are doing affluent white stuff. So the issue then is like, so Eminem, what are you saying? Brown and Board of Ed was a waste of time? No. Brown versus Board of Ed was a reality-based phenomenon based on the fact that people in these poorer schools did not have the resources they needed to be able to really turn up academically. Y'all feel me? So it's like, we're here and we're doing well, but I look at that school up the hill, and them schools up the hill got new books, new ceiling, new roof. So it makes perfect sense that you say, even though my kids are doing well, if my kids were sent to those schools, now they could do even better because they'd have those resources. Y'all follow me? You understand the logic? Don't it make sense? It makes sense. So people would literally send their children by military escort to go and integrate a school. The kids were being spat on. The kids were being cursed at. I want you to let's remind ourselves of this. What parent in their right mind sends their child to get cursed on and spit on in another place? A parent who really believes in the power of education. They were willing to take that risk because they thought that they needed that. We have populations right now, you talk about, we can't get parental involvement. We can't get them to show up to schools. Nah, black folks always been interested in the education of young people. If they're not showing up, there's something wrong with the structures that you've created that makes them not want to come. You gotta blame yourself. Because historically, they've always been connected. Y'all still with me? So now we take these young people and we put them in these schools. And they go into these more affluent schools and they go into these more white schools, and we think that that equals to progress, but we integrated the schools and never integrated the curriculum. Remember, curriculum is inherently inequitable? We integrated the schools, we never integrated the philosophies of teaching. And we integrated the schools, we never integrated the approaches. So the question is, Emden, what are the philosophies, the approaches that were happening in those schools where they were performing well? Now, that's the real darn question. That's the question nobody want to talk about. Everybody want to, no child left behind it, race to the top around it. But the real conversation is what was working. Well, let me tell you what was working. And what was working was the personalized nature of instruction that we do not use in contemporary schools. And then for the record, we integrated the schools, but folks who don't want to be around you just find a way not to be around you anyway. So they just reconstitute the demographics and the racial, the monetary barriers. And so the schools right now in 2017 are actually more segregated than they were in the 1950s. But hear this out. The schools are resegregated, but the pedagogies are still based on that age-old instruction. So now you got still all black and brown schools using the philosophies that didn't work when we sent our kids to integrated schools. Do you understand the fallacy of this process? So what was working? Well, I'll tell you. One, the absence of resources gave birth to the creativity and the instruction. Everybody talk about project-based instruction in 2017 like it's a new thing. We've been doing project-based instruction, because project-based instruction was a necessity. For example, if I have a school building and there's a hole in the roof and we have no custodial staff and don't have enough money to fix it, who is going to fix it? Real question. It's not hypothetical. Who's going to fix it? The kids, the teacher, and somebody from home. But you knew that you had to also teach them math. So then you started teaching math through the fixing of the roof. What's the ratio of this material to this material? You use the science. What alloys are being put? So they were teaching the content through the engagement in project-based learning that was nested in the needs of the community. Y'all following me? If you don't have instruction that requires young folks to feel as though they are doing something to help their own selves, in a way that doesn't go straight to the content, but goes around the content to infuse the content, they're going to be disconnected. That's the issue. Now, I got folks saying, well, we're doing project-based learning. You ain't doing that neither. Because the key to project-based learning, historically, that we knew, was that it has to be a project that meant something to the immediate community. You cannot have young folks engaging in projects and inquiry, and you're excited about projects and inquiry when the project ain't got nothing to do with their lives. Let's do a project around skiing, and you ain't never skied. What's the purpose? Instruction for young folks of color around academic content has to revolve around things that they do every single day and the improvement of their own conditions, because young folks also want to be able to feel comfortable in their hood, in their space. A service learning-based, project-based learning is the anchor for transformative pedagogy. I wish I could. That was the spirit. I can't control that. Huh? A project-based learning that's focused on service-based learning that's anchored in the community, and then you teach your content through that, because content first don't work. I can't say this enough. Listen, y'all, it's not to say that our kids are intellectually deficient, but the reality has to be a recognition of the fact that they are different. Y'all catch that? They are different people. You're not racist if you say these kids are different. You're racist if you say they're so different and so bad and awful and can't learn. But you gotta recognize they're different. Look, when I pulled up this morning, I was in a car with a math coach and a reading specialist, and we drove up and we had a nice, calm conversation. We were talking about life and our experiences, such a beautiful conversation. Then I stepped out the car, and as I stepped out the car, there was some students in the car, and they were playing trap music. And I love the folks I was with this morning, but the experiences were so diametrically opposed to each other, right? And it wasn't like there was something wrong with what we were doing, but what I was saying is, I looked at the young person in the trap music, and early in the morning, it was like 7-something. Getting it. Now, this is important because that may be dismissed as a non-academic phenomenon that has no connection to instruction. But if that music that was playing generated joy and positive energy for those young people outside of the school, you know that you can transfer that energy into the classroom when you got a trap music instrumental playing in the backdrop. That's not just me talking about culture, that's scientific. But why don't we do it? We don't do it because, one, we don't even pay attention to the fact that they listen to trap music outside. And two, once you hear it, you look at the outward representation of it rather than the academic value of it. Let me just keep going. That's only the first slide. So my point here is quite simple. You look at that word up there. What word do you see? Say it loud. Say it louder. Say it louder. Okay, so everybody saw good. Okay. Wait, what just happened? Who saw evil? Who saw both? Also, question, who saw evil first? I'm worried about you, that's what you see first. We gotta talk later. Right? It's a metaphor for this work. I truly and honestly believe that no educator comes into the work with the intentions to do evil. And that's just my belief. We go in there with great intentions, great imaginations about what we can do, but good very easily becomes evil. Look, every human being got evil within them. Can I talk or not? Every teacher has the potential within them to do violence on young people's spirits. You go there with good intentions, the evil within you lays within, and the less you focus on what they need, the more that evil overpowers what you see, to the point where you end up like her and only see the evil. That's how the kids read you. The kids only see what's within you. They don't see the outside stuff. They don't see your intentions. Can I talk? Nobody can see your intentions and educational philosophies. They don't read you based on your thoughts. They read you based on what you do. So when you go into a school every day and you have more of an allegiance to the structure of the school that does violence on them, all they see is the evil despite the fact that you wrapped yourself up in some good. If you are more connected to what the goals of the curriculum are than them feeling like they belong in that space, they only see evil. Can we talk? If you go into the place of instruction and your goal is your content and your content only, they only see evil. Because we ain't got all day, but we could talk about some content too. Another time out about content. You know, a lot of folks are in here teaching subject areas and content areas that are only teaching them one, they don't really know it. I'm just be honest. You don't really know what you're teaching, number one. And number two, you carry into your work this perception that you are the scientist, the mathematician, the this, the that, all them titles, and you only holding on to them titles because you ain't feel like you was good enough to do it. Tell you the truth. I'm sorry, I ain't come to sugarcoat nothing. I go and give math and science PDs all the time. I said, don't tell them my background. I'm just gonna give a PD in a school when we talk about STEM. And we get in there and they're like, oh, this guy gonna talk about some education. Then I'm like, oh, by the way, I'm an anthropochemist. And their ears perk up. Why did I need to tell you that I'm a scientist for you to feel like you need to learn about teaching? Because guess what? Your content expertise is completely separate from your teaching expertise. You can know content all day, inside, outside, and backwards, and don't know nothing about how to connect with a young person. And all that content goes completely out of the window. Now, I'm not saying you're a bad person. I'm saying you got to learn to know what your deficiencies are for you to be effective. You can say, you know what, I know a lot about what I'm supposed to teach. I don't know nothing about connecting with young people. Or, I don't know nothing about connecting with young black people. Can we talk? That you got to be able to say that. You're not racist because you say I can't connect with the black kids. You're only racist when you don't say it out loud, and then you start throwing these assumptions on them based on your perceptions of who they should be. That becomes the problem. Y'all with me? Look, we got to get to the point in the world of education where we move beyond respectability. You guys know what I mean by respectability? Appropriateness, decorum. Appropriateness and decorum are the enemy of transgressive pedagogy. That's not what teaching and learning is about. It's a down and dirty process to get the students where you need to go. As you focus on culture, you maintain academic rigor, but the work itself is STEM with no root, bear no fruit. Oh, I was going to talk about Ruby Bridges, right? But I skipped that one already. STEM with no root, bears no fruit. Where the STEM folks in here? Science, tech, engineering, mathematics, anybody? One. They just scared? Am I intimidating y'all right now? I'm not going to pick on you. You're going to be all right. Okay, one. Thank you. Two. Let me take a time out. Am I intimidating y'all this morning? You sure? Okay. So, when we talk about STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, that's our collective goals right now, right? The whole country's on it. If y'all ain't on it yet, you'll be on it in 2 weeks, I promise. Everybody got a coding academy. They want kids to be more successful in these disciplines. And here's one thing I've learned through my experiences in these disciplines. STEM with no root bears no fruit. When I talk about STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, without root bears no fruit, I'm also talking about the stem of a plant. If the stem of a plant is not connected to any root, is the plant going to bear fruit? Impossible. Science, technology, engineering, and mathematics without root will bear no fruit either. So what's the root? That's the question. Let me ask you let's act like we're in a classroom. If I'm not intimidating you, respond. Where do you find the root of a plant? In the dirt, in the ground. But what are some characteristics of the root? Or the dirt around it? That's where all the nutrients are. It's underground. It's dirty. Ain't it dirty? I try to plant. I got a glove. I got a little pinhole in my glove. A pinhole in my glove. I go in the ground once, my whole hand get dirty. Also, what are some other physical characteristics of the root, where it's found? So make sure I want to see who really with me today. It's dark. It's brown. See, this is how I know y'all ain't with me. Y'all ain't ready for really critical and courageous conversations. We gonna get you there though. The root is brown. It's underground. We talk about brown young folks. Can we talk some real talk? Y'all want to stay politically correct or not? Yes. It reaches out looking for the nutrients wherever it's going to get it, and it's brown. The young folks in your school, when you talk about the statistics of those folks who are undergoing violence right now, young folks are like the root. The root will go underground to anywhere it can find nutrients. If it's not finding nutrients in your school, it's going to go to the hood and find it. You want to address your gang problem, you want to address violence problems within communities, you got to be able to find out what is it that the gangs and those problematic places are offering that you ain't giving them. Because all they're doing is looking for nutrients. Okay. If you ain't got the nutrients, they're going to find it somewhere. If you don't feel like they're connected to your class, you don't feel like they're part of a family, they don't feel like their needs are met, they're going to go somewhere else. Gangs do it perfectly. Because a gang calls you a brother after you get initiated in. That's your family. We ride with you. We ride or die with you. Whatever you need, we got you. Are young folks feeling that in your classroom?
All right.
If they're not, they're going to find somewhere else. And we're talking in particular about the black and brown young folks because if we're going to be honest, they're the ones who traditionally are underperforming. And they're not underperforming by function of their abilities. They're functioning by the fact that we don't give them what they need to grow. They're not getting it. And when I talk in this hour-long sessions in the afternoon, we're going to talk about how you practically get there. The first thing first is, you can't just celebrate them on the football field or the basketball court. Because if you do that alone, they know that they know that you see them only as an athletic commodity, not as a full human being. They might not say that to you. They might play cool when they play ball, but they know you only see them as an athlete and not as an intellect. And so they carry that with them. Y'all with me? Look, you can't teach half people. You got to teach whole people. The whole person, emotionally involved, physically involved, athletically involved, etc. Content-wise as well. Academic rigor as well. Because I think a lot of folks also mistake this. Whenever I take this talk, they're like, well, Eminem's not talking anything about rigor and the content. And I say, who told you that rigor is rigor mortis? Who told you that to be academically rigorous means the kids got to look bored to death? You can be academically rigorous and have an engaging and fun time. Just because you don't like fun because you're corny doesn't mean that you got to rob the young people of that. Y'all ain't even... You know this one? And I'm going to run through this real quick. And I'm particularly excited that we have folks from the Cheektowaga School District here as I talk about this slide, because we have to talk specifically about indigenous populations and their histories and how that is actually being played out in our contemporary work in classrooms today, even though we don't ever name it. You know, can I get a little deep with y'all for a second? You know, as a scientist, when I think about these issues around education, I first of all started approaching this from just like, let's look at teaching. Let's look at teaching. Let's look at teaching. I'm like, let's look at theory. Let's look at theory. But then I started uncovering these things, man. And I just want to talk to y'all honestly, if that's okay. There are dimensions of this work that are so under-focused upon that inhibit us from growing, and nobody wants to talk at all about the spiritual component of the ineffectiveness of pedagogy. And I know it's not politically correct. You know, we talk about the separation of church and state and all that kind of stuff. I'm not talking about religion. I'm not talking about religion. We can have various religions, and I respect and honor our different religions. But the spiritual component, which is folks feeling unfulfilled in their being, having something to do with why they're not connecting in classrooms. Because we're inheriting spiritual phenomena from times past impacting our ability to grow. Y'all ain't, okay, I'm gonna talk, it's okay. Look, if you are within a school district that is built on land of indigenous populations, and we have ignored the fact that we are on their land, and we under-focus on the fact that they have been absolved and pushed out of that space, and you build your school on that land, you gotta understand that you are inheriting the violence that was done by folks before you and how you play things out. You're looking around like, why is this happening? Why are my kids not connecting? Why are we not doing what we're supposed to be doing? Because you have not done the self-work to recognize the fact that you are inheriting a problem historically that you've not addressed yet. And some of y'all, as educators and as school districts and as teachers, we got to go pay restitution. Y'all don't think, meaning you've got to go find the folks that you've done violence on by the structure of your school system and ask for forgiveness for that violence that you've done on them, and ask them to collaborate with you on how you can do teaching better going forward. Now, when I say these things, folks look at me like I'm crazy, but I'm telling you that we've talked about the world of everything else in the world of education we've talked about and tried except for these dimensions. So what's the last frontier? If you're unwilling to do it, then you're essentially saying, I want to keep doing the same things we've been doing before. I'm comfortable with that. It's one or the other. So these structures of schools that we had here is what we find in contemporary education today. And you know, the folks on the left, you know those little same people on the right? This is what they look like when they got into the school. That's what they look like when they got out of the school. Now, a lot of folks at the time, this was called a noble experiment. This was a noble thing to get these indigenous populations who had this flavor and this verve and this energy and make them look like how they were not. This is going, But we in a contemporary schooling system where the goals of schools sometimes are less about the academic content and more about how you can police the expressions of self of young people. People get so concerned about pulling somebody's pants up that they won't worry about filling up their brain. Now, I, like you, I'm not interested in seeing a young man's drawers, just like you not. I understand that. But I also understand that my focus as an educator is to be able to see beyond that first, to be able to attach the real person. Sometimes when you make a person feel whole, the pants come up automatically. Pants sagging are an indicator of brokenness. If you didn't know it, when a young person's pants are sagging, they are sending a message that they think the world don't care about them, so they think the world can kiss their behind. So they showing you they behind to kiss. If you change the conditions to make folks feel whole, you change the way that they approach that work, the aesthetics. The aesthetics are, you never solve a problem by trying to punch it head on. You create the conditions around that joint to make a person feel whole enough to heal. It's all about healing at the end of the day. When the brother talked about healing young folks who've undergone trauma and undergone all these processes, I want to talk about, let me skip some slides real quick and get here, because we mistake We mistake what we define as trauma. Y'all with me? Traumas are not just violent acts that folks have witnessed. Schooling is traumatic. Schooling is traumatic if I have to leave myself at the door to be like who you want me to be. And when folks respond, how folks respond to trauma is fighting it head on. Some folks are going to just be docile and be complicit, and some folks are going to be like, nope, you ain't taking me alive. So we're talking about post-traumatic stress disorder. I write about this in a book. There are other traumatic disorders. A friend of mine, Napoleon Wells, worked for the military, the VA. And he says when military veterans have undergone traumatic experiences, the first thing that the Army does is take them right away out of the traumatic experience and puts them somewhere else to help them to be able to heal from it. On July 4th, do you know that on July 4th, because of the loud noises, there are certain folks who have been in the military, they take them away from where they are and put them in a safe space so that they don't get triggered by the violence of the loud fireworks? Do you know that's a real thing? If the military knows that if a person has undergone trauma, you got to extract them from the traumatic situation, and I'm telling you that the students' experience in schools are traumatic, then if you send them back to school every day, you're actually invoking that trauma and forcing a negative response. Unless you change the structure of the school to help them heal from the trauma of past experiences in the school. So PTSD, we're talking about a poor teaching in schools disorder. I said poor teaching in science, because science is particularly bad, but poor teaching in schools disorder. A school that extracts culture invokes trauma. Poor treatment in society disorder. A post-Trayvon stress disorder. And that's real, because when you talked about the violence, I was just going to pick up on you, because we're flowing today. When you talk about the violence that young folks were undergoing by witnessing violence and death, right? Since Trayvon Martin, young folks on social media are witnessing violence and death on a consistent basis, and schools are not even creating spaces for them to have a conversation about it. And if you're not creating a space for a conversation about it, that's affecting them. It gets deposited into their psyche and affects how they respond to you. You ever walk up on a young person and just the look on their face just looks like they just want to fight you? And you're like, bro, all I said was good morning. That's not a bad person. You got to change your out. That's a person who's undergoing severe trauma, and that's the only way they can express it. So you got to be able to counter that with the opposite approach. And you got to do that consistently. I ain't got time for the practical. Can I go? I'm going. Look, you got to go. You got to do that consistently. So when somebody's responding to you in a way that causes a challenge and they're pushing back, you've got to be able to meet them with the opposite emotion. Now, when you meet them with the opposite emotion, they're not going to respond to you right away. They're going to still be the same way. You got to do it twice. You got to do it 3 times. Every consistent pattern action becomes ritualized practice. I wish I was brilliant enough to say that. That's Erwin Goffman when he talked about ritual. So the young person has developed a ritual around a scowl. So the educator has to create a counter ritual to be able to show them that you're responding differently to that than you get the real person. Some of y'all try to be nice once, they mad at you, then you're like, oh well, let me be mean again. Do you have the disposition, the courage, and the fortitude to truly be an educator? You got to ask yourself, you got the patience to keep trying? If you ain't, maybe you should leave. My next thing I want to focus on, history. Y'all seen this? You ever seen this before? This came from an actual Jeopardy game where all the contestants went through all the categories, and the only category left was African American history. And they were all scared to ask the questions, right? I think this is essential. We cannot engage with young folks who we want to do well if we don't focus on their histories, but history in a very interesting way. History in a way that shows them that they are part of the lineage of the history. A lot of folks say to young folks, they're not interested in history. Well, have you tried? Have you introduced them to the generations that they come from? Have you shared them narratives about their greatness? If you don't do that, you lose them. Kids want to hear that. And not just in social studies class. Every class has to be, if you're worried about black and brown folks underperforming in your school, around your content area, you need to go back in your content area and do some research about folks who look like them in that area that led the field. That got to be your opener for every single lesson. Because if you don't, representation matters. And if there's no representation, you lost. When I talk about African American history, I'm also talking about contemporary history as well. Right? Because history to young folks who are 15 is what happened 16 years ago. Right? You don't have to, because, I'm talking about history. Let's all just talk about Benjamin Banneker all day long. I love Benjamin Banneker. But young folks need to see folks who look like them who are doing it now. This representation, can I say this again? Say with me, representation matters. Representation matters. You might need to go find a PhD in one of these local colleges that's about 40 years old or something to go show the young people what it looked like to still have some swag and be smart. If they don't see that, they don't make the connection. And anybody see my South by Southwest joint, that history piece is also about the imagination of the academic, the understanding of that dynamic. When I talk about African American history, it's also about showing young people that you ain't got to choose between being academic and having swag. We've created this false dichotomy, right? The quiet, nice ones who dress well and listen to the teachers are going to be all the smart ones. And if you don't do that, you're going to be bad. So then they're like, well, I don't want to be corny, so I'm going to choose that because that's better. And then you wonder why you can't get them back. I think part of the work here around history is about reimagining what history looks like, right? Be like, you rap? Oh, you want to rap about science? That's a thing. Or you do hair? You want to do hair and know about the chemistry you're doing here? Reimagining history, making them feel like so they don't have to choose between one or the other. Now, it's hard for an educator to teach a young person how to feel not to choose when you don't know what the other side look like and you don't see no value in it. You see what I'm saying? If you can't see value in the other side, then you are devaluing it the whole entire time, which is back again why we got to take folks to the hood. Who's still with me?
I'm still with you.
I got a lot more to say.
Come on.
I'm gonna keep going. I might keep y'all later. Now, it's okay. I'm gonna just mess up your schedule a little bit. So, when we talk about this history, I also want to talk about the value of certain anti-academic phenomena that we got to infuse in, like music. Y'all with me?
Yeah.
Music. This is major. What does music do? It calms the savage beast, although we don't see nobody's beast, but it calms folks, it sure does. What else does it do? It soothes you, it calms you. But do you know that music is an integral piece of teaching and learning? Rhythm is an important piece for teaching and learning for folks of color?
Yes.
So I'll tell you a story about the zebra finch. This bird. This bird sings an amazing, amazing song. And so scientists started studying this bird to see how it learned the song. Y'all still with me? Yes. Y'all with me? Yes. Okay. So as they studied this bird, they started realizing that the bird learned the song from an older male ancestor in its lineage. So the child would come out, there would be an older male, the old male would sing the song, the young child would watch the older male, it would learn the song and sing the same song as the older male. So it was a learned phenomenon. And generation after generation, after one is learned, the next one comes out and learns. It's a beautiful process. And also the beautiful process is just talking about the significance of male role models that we can learn from biology, to apply to pedagogy, right? Because, a lot of times we talk about why do you have such issues with black males, because black males don't have black males to tell them that they love them. Love is not a part of the discourse or the lexicon when you talk about black maleness and masculinity, right? Like, we got to a point in time where people are proud of saying, I don't know my dad. Have you ever heard that? Like, you don't know your dad? Me neither. So you got to undo that by introducing new males into the lexicon. But that's not even my point. I'll be everywhere, man, because I'm moving. So they pass on this song. So scientists said, you know what? If they passed on the song, I wonder what would happen if we take them out of the lineage before they learn the song and marry them to another bird. And then they have offspring. So the birds mated, they had offspring. Now the offspring now comes out singing a song, but it didn't have a male to learn it. So now it started making up its own song. So the new song was just a messed up version of the original song, right? It was like R. Kelly remixes. Like the first one was good, and you just messed it up. So the new bird came out, sang a messed up song, no male to learn it. Now the old song. And so what happens now? The awful song starts getting passed down from generation to generation. Does that make sense? But here's the magic. I get excited. The magic is, once the birds who've been separated from their lineage and ancestry generations past hear one note of the original song, they self-correct and learn the original song.
All right.
Are y'all understanding this? if you hear back the songs of your ancestor, your path forward gets changed. This is not just understanding. This is science. This is real stuff. Now, what educators are introducing young people back to the songs of their ancestry? Does teaching and learning focus on the creation of the rhythms that allow that ancestry to come through the classroom? You ever have a kid in the classroom who in the back of the class banging on the table? I know you used to have them. And you say, stop that, stop that. Do you know what that young person is really doing? That young person is trying to create a rhythm to call forth the young person is in the classroom trying to construct a rhythm to change the environment in the classroom so they can call forth their own brilliance. Now, if you see no value for the rhythm, you shut it down. And when you shut it down, you rob them of the opportunity to reconnect.
Okay.
This is the thing. This is my thing with schooling that gets me. It's that we have internalized a version of schooling that is completely different from learning.
Wow.
Schooling is not learning. Schooling is a process. It's an indoctrination to new norms. You understand what I'm saying? Come in, do this, do that, do that. That's the intention of it. Learning is an active process. Learning is what is perceived as by some people, a chaotic process. Look, people welcome chaos if they welcome the people who are enacting the chaos. But if you, let me, because I'm sorry. Listen, I get to go to schools all around the country. And they employ my work, which is I'm excited about. The schools who employ my work the most are not the schools like the ones that we're trying to focus on here. I remember once I went to a school, they picked me up in a limo, they drove me up in these hills, they opened up the I walk in there, I'm like, this school looks better than my college campus. Genuinely, right? And I get in there, and they're like, damn, then we're enacting reality pedagogy, and we want you to see this in action. And I walked past the school, and I was walking in the hallway, and this little kid about this high ran down the hallway and bumped me and kept going. And I like this little white boy just bumped me, like I was still in my hood presence, right? Bumped me and kept going. And then I was like, okay, this is fascinating enough. So I walked down the hallway, and I go into a classroom. I went into the classroom. There are kids literally sitting by the window having a conversation. The kids up front with the teacher talking. The kids on the sides who are doing their own thing with some laptops in front of them. And they say, Dr. Emden, this is what happens when we enact reality pedagogy. And I said, this is fascinating. Huh? And then something started coming to me. I was like, wait, that kid who was walking down the hallway, he ain't have no pass. Because y'all know how y'all are with the passes. Some teachers in here give the kids a super big pass so they'll be embarrassed to come back, right? So the kid bumped me and didn't have no pass. But in that space, there was a welcoming of the chaos required for true learning. Because of who was expressing it. There was a welcoming of the populations expressing it, that they don't have an inherent violent tendency. So for them to learn, the kid, you know where the kid was running to? The kid was running from his one science class to his English class because the science teacher didn't have the answer on the word he wanted to define, and he wasn't sure about the Google definition, so he went to go ask his English teacher. So he's running around the hallway to go learn from another teacher. I go to an urban space where we want to really enact reality pedagogy, and the kids are lined up against the wall, sitting down in their desks, got to raise their hand every 5 seconds. And what I'm learning is what's fascinating to me is this: the most progressive and successful schools for the most affluent populations that don't look like the young folks who are underperforming actually have a classroom process that allows them to have freedom. But you're so fearful because your perception of the kids is that they have an inherently violent tendency. So you're so locked into your perception of how bad things can be that you don't create the spaces for them to get to where they could go. Because if I go into an urban school and the kid is running down the hallway and bumps me, he's suspended. But in that space, he's learning. And as long as we carry these perceptions of young people, we can't get to the point we need to go. That's culturally relevant all day in your curriculum, but if your practice is not showing that, you lost. Another thing with the zebra finch, which I thought was particularly fascinating, is how we have to also learn that there are components of teaching and learning that goes beyond culture, that also goes into like their genetic predispositions to certain forms of expression. Folks don't like when I say this part, but I'm gonna say it anyway. You know, best way to express it is, I went to an event once, and it was really exciting for me because I got this. So my entire academic career, I was, you get into academia, and those of you who are in academia know this, and they're like, you keep going up, get your tenure, get your awards, and I'm looking at these things that I'm supposed to achieve, and I'm like, I'm gonna go and try to achieve them, right? So I'm working really hard to achieve them. So there was this one award that I really wanted to get, and there was supposed to be this banquet, and everybody's talking about this banquet. Oh, when you get the award for this banquet. And so I'm working hard my whole life to get into this award, to get to this banquet. So I worked super hard, I get the award one year, I go in, we get into the banquet. When we get into the banquet, it was the most deflating experience ever, because in my head, I'm like, you get this award, they're gonna have a party? And I know what parties are like. So I'm like, if they're gonna have a party, it's about to go down, right? So I get in there, and it's like somber, and the music is that low. I'm like, how y'all got a party without music? Like, the music is low, and I'm like, at least I got food. And I turn to the food place, and all they got is like little bits of cheese and some grapes. I'm like, yo, what kind of party is this? You ain't got no music, you ain't got no food. And it was such an anticlimactic process. You understand what I'm saying? So, but I'm running there to get there. And then they had this one woman like, all right, guys, we'll have a dance break. I'm like, you gotta have a dance break? It's a party. They're supposed to be dancing throughout, right? So anyway, they had the dance break. And as they had the dance break, they played some music. And then some folks got up there, and they started dancing. And these are like leaders in education, and they're dancing. And I think it was playing a little Marvin Gaye. And as they were dancing, like, you know what? Let me give an example. Everybody clap. Go like this. Okay, we got a rhythm group. So this is the music, right? And they're dancing, and they're like, right? So you can stop. My point is, there was a rhythm to the music, and I was seeing, I heard it, and I felt it, but then I was watching something, and there was a misalignment. And I was saying to myself, well, damn, and these are folks who are phenomenal at describing the nuances of the achievement gap. And all I can say to myself is, man, there's a severe rhythm gap. You know what I mean? Like, let me play this out. Y'all following me? Some folks have an inherent predisposition to certain forms of expression. We've got to not run away from that. We're oftentimes so scared of using that we lose opportunity. Look, if you're not rhythmically inclined, you might not need a rhythmic-based instruction. But if you have folks who are rhythmically inclined and it speaks to who they are, you better have a rhythmically based instruction. You better have some call and response. You better have some call, like some movement. You better have a praise break time in class. You better create a space for them to go and greet somebody. Can we talk about some Pentecostal pedagogy for a second? Right? You go to a Pentecostal church, there are certain norms that are in place, that are generated simply because historically the folks in the church have learned what the appropriate pedagogical practices are to get the congregation students to be able to fully be keyed in to the instruction. Can I talk to y'all? So when the pastor says, can I get an amen, everybody knows to say amen. Why is that the case? Because they know that you need to get the call and response to get everybody going. You ain't got no call and response in your class, you're suffering, bro. Because you ain't got them there. Or when the pastor winks at the organist, then the organist winks back. Then they start playing the music at a certain volume. And then that means that everybody knows we can catch the spirit now. And then grandma might get up and run up and down these aisles, right? But, and this is important, but then when the pastor winks back and the music gets more solemn, she knows, okay, it's over, and she might pass out right where she at. She might not even make it back to her seat, right? You get the blanket, put her wig back on, make sure she all right, and then you get back to, now, this is jovial, but what I'm telling y'all is this is pedagogical, this is instructional. And people don't like when we talk about this stuff, but our kids are suffering. They're suffering because of the absence of folks in schools to recognize their forms of expression. So when you have a class that's a 90-minute block and can't nobody stand up and go greet somebody, that's violence. Amen. Because every pastor knows you got to create that space.
That's right.
Right? Somebody might say, you know what? The Lord just spoke to me. And I'm not saying that the Lord ain't talking to our pastors, but You know, some of our pastors might not have the Lord directly on speed dial, but they can work on that, right? But the Lord just spoke to me and said, I need you to go out there and just go touch somebody and just go greet somebody. And the person gets up, goes across the church, and they might say, yeah, and then, girl, you know what happened, sister? Because there's a space in the church for the creation of non-church discussion so you can connect folks back to the church goals. Ooh. Y'all, I'm trying to give y'all this truth. So I could teach a young person about a math lesson by actually looking at my return on investment. Y'all with me? Look, you can have a 40 minutes of instruction or 90 minutes of instruction where the kids are fighting you the entire time. Or you could say, you know what? I'm going to create a pocket of a 4-minute discussion on what LeBron James did last night that is completely separated from the content area, but that can generate the connectedness of all the young people. Then I make a way to tie. Speaking of LeBron James in buckets, do you know his statistics were, and the percentage was, teaching is the weaving of narratives from lived experience. That's what teaching is. But an educator who is unaware of lived experience can't even start. This is what I'm trying to tell y'all today. Some of y'all ain't even starting yet. You've been teaching for 10 years and you ain't even started. You have a degree, a master's, a bachelor's, a whatever it is, and you've not even begun to teach. Because without the understanding of the lived experience, you lost the whole thing. Without the focus on history, you lost the whole thing. Without the focus on rhythm, you lost the whole thing. Without the creation of social spaces to enact, you lost the whole thing. I just try to give y'all a little wraparound in case you missed my points earlier. Can we go on? We got to wrap up. How long we got? Nah, I'm gonna respect it. How much time we got?
Just
10 more minutes. I'm gonna take 15. Okay, so now what we want to talk about. Listen, y'all. I'm not here every day. All right, and I got some things to share. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I'm gonna try to shut it down. But anyway, we got hour-long workshops later. So we got to understand identities. Young folks are expressing role identities in schools that are very different from their core identities. For those of you who are interested in sociology, so you don't think I'm just talking culture all day. A role identity is the identity of how you act given the conditions around you. It's literally R-O-L-E, a role that you play. Y'all with me? Your role can be very different from your core. The core is who you really are. If you're in a school that creates the backdrop that supports the enactment of a very specific role, kids will play that role to a T. It doesn't mean that's who they are. They're kids who love their baby brother and kiss him and hug him at home and like to listen to calm music, and then you see them in the classroom and they are a super thug. And if you know them, you're like, why? This is not you. Why that's not them is because the conditions at the school have created a backdrop that forces them to act a different role. Kids play roles quite well. They go into their intellectual Rolodex and say, what is it that this person or this school wants from me? Let me give them back what they want. So if you're fearful of me, I gotta give you somebody to be scared of. That's right. Yep. If you see me as violent, I'm gonna play up my violent tendencies. So what you need to do is be able to tap into the core to change the enactments of the role. And by the way, how do you get kids to enact their core identities? By educators enacting their core identities. Because some of y'all need to be healed too. The work we didn't talk about. Some of you go into schools every day and you put on your tie or wear your fancy dress and you get in there and you're somebody that's not who you are. Your friends wouldn't know that's really you. Your family wouldn't know that's really you because you're acting a role that you think the institution expects of you. And the thing is, if you go into a classroom and you are a fraud, the kids will give you back a response to a fraud. Jay-Z said it brilliantly. I put my hand on my chest and it means that I feel you're real, recognize real, and you're looking familiar. The kids recognize authenticity and they can smell inauthenticity from 3 miles away. Now, you don't gotta be like the young people to be authentic. You've gotta be like yourself.
That's right. That's right.
What do you like to do on a weekend? Are you a fisher? Put some fish on there. A fisherman, put some fish on there. You got a family, let the kids know your family. You want the kids to be able to interact with a real human being. If you're constructing a role, they will construct back a role. If you become a real person, then you be a real person. I oftentimes tell folks about my favorite singer. My favorite singer is Stevie Wonder. Right? And Stevie Wonder had this album called Songs in the Key of Life. Who knows that album? Okay. See, this is why I love Stevie, because black folks, white folks, and in between, they be like, yes, we love some Stevie, right? So Stevie has some Songs in the Key of Life, one of the most amazing albums of all time. It is a double album. It has a lot of collaborations on it. Love's in Need of Love Today, Ribbon in the Sky. I mean, you know, the song, and when it came out, even the critics were like, this is almost like a perfect album. Everybody loved it. See, culturally relevant teaching is supposed to be the equivalent of Songs in the Key of Life by Stevie Wonder, meaning that literally it's teaching in the key of the life of the young people. You need to construct your songs in the key of life. That's the goal. But let's take a step back. See, before Stevie made Songs in the Key of Life, about 4 years beforehand, he did an album called Inner Visions. Now, a lot of folks don't know Inner Visions. It was not as popular as Songs in the Key of Life. It was a shorter album. It didn't have as many collaborations. It was less critically acclaimed. But listen to me, y'all. Stevie Wonder could not have created the perfect album that is Songs in the Key of Life unless he first did the album Inner Visions, which is a turning the eye inwards and reflecting on who he was. You can't teach in the key of life until, as an educator, you've first done your first album of Inner Visions. If you've not looked inwards to be able to address your perceptions of young people, your perceptions of your task, your goals of your instruction, you could never teach in the key of life. The Inner Visions work is a requirement to the Songs in the Key of Life. Man, I got 5 minutes. Oh man. So can I do a little bit of neuroscience? Let's get back to my scientific world. Just to hammer home this point. When we do this work, oh man, it's so much, y'all. Do it. All right. I just want to talk real quick about hormones that are released into certain spaces. Or do I talk about music again? Or do we talk? I got an hour lesson, an hour joint later. I'm gonna get here and then go there, and I'm gonna stop. I promise I'm gonna stop. Okay, look. So what we know now, as in the world of neuroscience, is that human beings respond to phenomena through the kind of hormones that are released at certain points in time. You following me? And you can actually generate conditions in your classroom that allow folks to be neuroscientifically wired to optimal learning. Does that make sense? So that if I create conditions that scientists have said allows folks to have the kind of hormones that generate good learning, then I can make them learn better. So let's talk first of all about dopamine. Dopamine motivates you to act towards a goal and desire and a need. The more young people feel, or human beings generally feel like they meet goals, the more dopamine is released. Once dopamine is released, literally your body opens up to be able to function on optimal levels. You with me? So then if that's the case, and young folks are underperforming in schools, how do we then create schooling structures to make them feel like goals are met on a consistent basis? It means then you don't have a 40-minute class, you have 4 10-minute classes. Y'all with me? And then after each 10-minute class is a goal to be achieved that is immediately celebrated. So now you've got 4 opportunities through each lesson to create dopamine release that connects kids back to the learning experience. Y'all ain't feeling this neuroscience I'm dropping on you, but you're gonna be all right. Serotonin flows when people feel significant or important. So you have to create classroom structures to allow young folks to feel significant or important. Now, here's what's interesting. It doesn't talk about feeling significant or important around the content per se. You get me? It's about creating opportunities for kids to feel significant or important generally. So a kid comes into your classroom and just got their hair done. It's good pedagogical practice to be like, damn, girl, your hair's fly. Because it releases serotonin to make them more comfortable in that space. For young folks who are poor and has an outfit that's matching, you gotta notice these things. You gotta be critical enough. Man, does your check and your Nikes match the bill of your fitted cap? You a bad man. You understand what I'm saying? And the educator has to learn how to be able to identify this phenomena to be able to create classroom spaces where serotonin is released. Now I'm saying this, once the serotonin is released, once the dopamine is released, and you've got them simmering, then you throw that content in there. But if you do content first without creating the conditions, then the content falls flat.
That's right.
My time's right.
That's right.
I know my time's
You
right now.
We need to change this.
Now, I'm going to say one more thing, and then I'm going to close out, I promise. And I'm going to do the hour times, right? Are you learning?
Yeah.
Thinking, at least? Okay. Tell you one last amazing narrative that I'm going to close out, and then we'll talk about afternoon. A majority of scientists do a lot of study about human behavior and interaction by studying Latin biologists here, right? So we study the mice to be able to help us to make sense of how human beings interact and behave or act in certain circumstances. So the research project, this actually came out just like 5-6 months ago, where the scientists took a mouse and put the mouse in a cage as part of their project. Now, there's a whole other narrative about projects that I can go, but I can't go. With the mice are in the cage. You guys go with me on this? So now, as the mice are in the cage, the scientists put a very favorable smell into the cage. It was the smell of cherry blossoms. And cherry blossoms, the mice loved it, they kind of reacted to it, this looked like songbirds, they calmed away, they enjoyed it. You guys with me? But then, they introduced the scent of cherry blossoms concurrently with an electric shock. Meaning, the scent and the shock came at the same time. Now, once the scent and the shock came at the same time, how do you think the mice reacted? They jumped. There was a physical response to it. Now, let me tell y'all something. That's schooling, and that's education. Education, for you to go through the marginalized, is a sweet smelling thing. Everybody wants to get educated. Everybody wants to learn. How do I know that? Kevin and Mark talk out on Monday. Kids will memorize the Lord's time out and inside that by Wednesday. Easy. These are things I'm like, you know what the hell is on the periodic table? They couldn't tell me. And that's just like 6 boxes. And they will understand fully the robustness of the whole hour. So that their ability is there. Y'all with me, right? So they love the smell, but it's introduced to the shock. So when the shock comes with the learning, they respond to the learning, and guess what happens? Now, they take the shock away and just introduce the cherry blossoms without the shock. Guess what? They start reacting like they were still being shocked. Actual phenomenon. Now, this you might be able to intellectually follow because it's a very simple experiment. But then the scientists took the offspring of the mice that were exposed to the shock and the scent. That would mean took the offspring out before they were exposed to either of those external stimuli. Put the offspring in a cage. Introduced the scent of cherry blossoms to the offspring. And they jumped like they were being shocked. This is epigenetic. This is generational trauma. Now, if young folks' parents have been going through the trauma of schooling in a way that's not connected to culture, young folks in classrooms today are genetically predisposed to the condition that allows them to respond negatively to the instruction. Which means then, if you know about rituals, that you have to undo the initial practices by hyper-focusing on a counter-practice to the initial practice. You see how I'm reading the story for y'all? Look, if you don't focus on the creation of the new structures, they're going to respond negatively on their own. So, teach us that big story you think of the head or not? Yeah? Last now. Let me go on that. I know. 2, I know. They're not going to have you back now. That's just my trauma. I'm sorry. Last story, I promise, right? Quickly. Dinka tribe. Because sometimes the stories come up and get points. Indigenous tribe, around how that happened. They had a disease that affected them called tetanus. The tetanus called lockjaw. The lockjaw, where their mouths were shut. So their mouths couldn't open. Y'all with me?
Yes.
And so they couldn't eat. And so because they couldn't eat, here's the thing. They had food around them, but couldn't ingest the food because their mouths were locked shut. So because of that, the people in the area were like, oh my God, it's worse to die from starvation when you have food than when you don't have it. So the food is there, they just couldn't open their mouths. So they said, you know what? Look, the food is here, the kids gotta eat. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna rip out the teeth of the kids. I know some of y'all cringing. By hook, they hook the teeth and pull them out because they had to do that violence so they could move the teeth so they could parse open the lips so the kids can actually get the food. You with me
the young folks was because they needed to do the violence so the kids can actually have food. And guess what happened? It worked. They could force the food down, the kids could ingest it, pass it down, and over time they became stronger, and as they became stronger, they were able to overcome the lockjaw and the tetanus. Y'all with me? And so what happened was now, the conditions initially forced us to do the violence. But they got so strong, they ain't need to rip out teeth no more, because now the kids just open their mouth and eat. So they have the ability now to just open their mouth and eat, but it had become a ritual that once the kid started developing their teeth, that they rip the teeth out. So even though they had the ability to ingest the food, the cultural practice was still to rip the teeth out. Let's talk about schooling for a second. Schooling for young folks of color historically has been a traumatic experience. We talked about the indigenous, they had to have the culture extracted for the sake of getting the learning that was book learning. It was a necessary convention given the historical conditions of our time. We had to extract our culture. You could not be yourself. You couldn't talk a certain way. Those of us who are of a certain age will remember when your parents like, listen, don't embarrass me from these white people. You heard that before? So you better police yourself completely, because we have to do that in order to get accepted. It was a necessary convention given the history we are at that time. Where we are right now, though, the information is available. We got Google, we got strength, we got fervor, we have ability. Young folks, the hip-hop generation is more affluent and more exposed to one than ever before. So now we have a generation who actually has the ability to just open their mouths and learn. We no longer have to put their teeth out. We got a big tribe amongst us right now. All we have to do is create the conditions for them to open their mouths and eat. The question is, are you more committed in favoring the institution and its violence? Are you more committed to changing the conditions of the institution for the kids to be free?
Let's give another warm welcome and round of applause to our dynamic speaker, Dr. We're going to hear more from Dr. Emmett in the workshops today, so have a seat, please. So if you're hungry for more, you will receive more. We have to do a little bit of adjustment on the workshops. So the first, thank you, Dr. Cash. The first workshop, we're going to begin immediately, so if you take a 5-minute break and then go straight to your first workshop, which should be in your registration packet. If you don't have a registration packet, then make sure you do get one. Because we won't reconvene, I just wanted to do a few thank yous. Thanking the Culturally and Linguistically Responsive Teaching Committee and the Division of CAI, the Board of Education members, Superintendent Mary Morris and Dr. Hunter, Principal Crystal Bartlett, Principal Doyle, and Dr. Stevenson for the use of their school. A very special thank you to Board Member Dr. Harris Tigg for suggesting Dr. Emden, and to Board Member Sharon Belton Cotton for making the connection with Cheektowaga Central School District possible. Let's give them all a round of applause. So if you open up your folders, on your name tag, you will have a small dot. If your sticker is blue, if your dot is blue, your first session will be right here in the auditorium with Dr. Emden. So please stay seated while the others will leave for their sessions. So if you have a blue dot, stay right here. If you have a yellow dot, please exit through the doors on your right. Turn right to take the elevator to the 3rd floor. If you have a green dot, please exit through the doors on your left. Turn left to take the elevator to the 4th floor. We have guides in the corridors to assist you. Thank you and enjoy your sessions. Again, through the door